Hello, San Gabriel Valley. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of From the Corner Office. And through COVID, it's from our homes. So we'd like to welcome you and our very special guest today, Marty Stevens-Heebner, who is the CEO of Clear Home Solutions. Marty, welcome.
Thank you so
Also,
much.
one of the benefits of COVID is that we have the opportunity to be with my partner in crime, Gail Schaper-Gorden. She is the producer of From the Corner Office. And the great thing is, as we've been doing these episodes from our homes, she is in a panel style interview with us to have a more rich conversation with our amazing guests. So Gail, welcome to you.
Thank you. And so nice to have you here, Marty.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Marty, let's just to kick off, tell us a little bit about Clear Home Solutions. You are a leader in your industry, so I would love to hear about what you do and how you came to be.
Oh, well, thank you so much. At Clear Home Solutions, we work, and you may hear my dog's footsteps as she walks underneath because we're all home. There you go. So at Clear Home Solutions, we work with older adults and their families. When it comes to when their personal property is kind of gumming up the works of them moving forward. So personal property can include their lifetime's worth of treasures, paperwork, their general stuff. And so we go in and we can project manage their moves if they're moving, empty out the home so it's ready to sell or lease. If they're going to stay in aging, they call it aging in place. I actually think of it as thriving in place. We go in and reorganize and recalibrate their home so that they can live there safely and comfortably. And also, we're one of the few companies, actually nationwide, that do professional home inventories. This comes in handy when you have battling beneficiaries or if there's a not so nice divorce going on, just to make sure everything's documented and things don't go walking out the door. So that's what we do. When it comes to seniors and stuff, think of us at Clear Home Solutions. We can get it handled. And the way this came about, this was actually my fourth company. My other ones were smaller ventures. And it really came about because I was dealing with my father who lived back in Buffalo. Mom died when she was actually my age. I'm 58 now, so she was young. My dad made it to 90 back in Buffalo, and of course I live in LA. So we always say in our business that we work with the DA, the designated adult in the family. That was me. It's probably you too as well. And so I was flying back and forth to Buffalo, helping him, and I realized I was really fascinated and enjoying all that I was learning about later life. And I thought, oh, I could form a business out of this. Where's the niche that needs taking care of? And I found this niche of helping people deal with their treasures of a lifetime and all the emotions around them. And so that's how I launched Clear Home Solutions over 7 years ago.
Thank you for that. That has to be probably out of, and Gail, chime in. For when you think about the emotions around that type of business, you have to see everything under the, on the face of the earth that comes in.
We really do. I have a great staff, and it's a blending of being efficient, of course, for our clients, but also blending it with compassion. Because you just never know what you stumble across. I remember working with a client, and it was the last day we were in her home. And so there wasn't a lot left there, but out of nowhere appeared this child's drawing that it was clearly decades old. And it had been drawn by her son when he was 7, and he had died at 17. And so needing to figure out what to do with this, we did end up keeping it. She ended up keeping it. But, helping her kind of deal with all the emotions that came out, because this is also the last day in her home, and this appears, and it was from her son. And just knowing how to kind of help somebody navigate through that and just really listen to them and acknowledge what they're saying, and that this is really emotional for them. So important.
Well, you asked me to chime in. I was imagining also the ways in which I'm sure that people need to be trained how to be non-judgmental. I was thinking of one of my Vistage members who, with his 2 brothers, went back to take care of his mom's apartment. She had recently passed away. And he said, my mom, for some reason, she collected all these office supplies. He said, I have enough folders, file folders, to last for the rest of my life. And she had it. Yeah, and it reminded me, I mean, luckily you're dealing with people while they're still alive and they're transitioning, but the things that people save, I imagine that people have to learn how to just kind of be natural and non-judgmental about some of the things that you find.
Absolutely. And some of the most emotional situations we come into are what we call the clear outs after someone has passed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're uncovering all kinds of things. And so, with my staff, honestly, it took me 3.5 of these 7 years to figure out what I really needed to look for in my field staff. And it really is looking for some sort of experience in their own background. If they're on the younger side, like late 20s, early 30s, usually they were very close with their grandparents, or one of my staff has an autistic brother, someone very, very strongly on that spectrum. And so where you just have to have that empathy for that person and being able to kind of be inside their shoes and almost see it and literally see it from their perspective to relate to it. We are hoarding specialists. And so it's knowing how to walk into a situation that is very difficult, both in terms of just shocked by the amount of stuff, trying to walk around things, and also there's a lot of smells involved with that, but just knowing how to reassure the person that you've got this, and realizing, the hoarding disorder is now official. It's a mental disorder in the latest DSM-5, that is the Bible for the psychiatric community, and it's its very own disorder. It used to be a subset of OCD, but it really is. They relate very differently to things than we do. And everybody has a different brain type. And that's another thing too, just recognizing, look at the three of us. We're all human, we're all white women. We have those things in common, and yet look how different we are. Just look at how we sound, everything else. Well, of course, our brains are gonna be very different too. And so it's just recognizing that, accepting it, and figuring out what works best for them. How do they organize? Because even with hoarders, they have some kind of system in place, or frankly, they would no longer be alive. And so it's finding what works for them and then gently building out from there to help it make sense. If that makes sense, I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Can I ask another question then, Jackie?
Yes.
So we have a neighbor who clearly was a hoarder, that she had so much, she had no more room in her house and in her carport. So she had 2 cars that were parked on the street that were filled with things. And somehow she had people that came to do her house, and they were weeks, and with large vans and sorting through things. And you saw them wearing, and this was pre-COVID, wearing masks and all kinds of protective gear, clearly. And I'm wondering, and I haven't seen this woman since. And so I'm wondering, what the emotional impact is on a hoarder when all of that stuff is gone. What happens? What happens to them emotionally?
Well, hoarders, saying that they tend to be recidivist is too strong a term, I think. But they tend to, look, it's a hoarding disorder. If you don't have a therapist involved dealing with that underlying disorder, they're going to go back to the way they were. The way I explained it when I'm training people is I say, look, people who, there's a 1 to 5 hoarding scale. It's called the Clutter Hoarding Scale from the Institute for Chronic Disorganization. You can look it up online, Clutter Hoarding Scale. It's a 1 to 5 scale. It's got all kinds of different levels that people are measured on. And when you're dealing with a level 4 or 5, they definitely have hoarding disorder going on. And so you need a therapist to work with them, or they're going to slide back into it. And the way I explain it to my staff is like, look, when something goes out the door, I believe they physically feel that being taken away because they are that connected to, items, things that they just are. That's how it is. It may not make sense. So many people say, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense to you. It makes sense to them.
Right.
And so you need to step inside that mind frame. And chances are she started bringing things back in. She probably went to a horrible depression, chances are. But it just depends. If there was a therapist involved, maybe she's doing better. That's possible. You may want to check on her. But it's a huge deal. I mean, initially it can be wonderful for them to see the floors and the countertops and things like that, but it's very foreign to them. And there was one woman we worked with, definitely had hoarding disorder severely. And she would complain about, my countertops are clear. All these things are gone from my kitchen, because that was comforting to her. That was her environment. That's what she felt comfortable in. It wasn't safe or healthy for her because there were insects and things like that. God only knows what that we couldn't see. But it just feels foreign to them, and it doesn't feel right. So like I say, when it's that strong, there needs to be a therapist involved. If you just go in and cart things out, it's brutal. It's brutal. And when you are doing a clear out, for example, whether it's after someone has passed or someone has already been, in one case I remember working with a fiduciary, and her clients had already been moved to assisted living. Well, before we even started working there, the fiduciary had been going through some of the paperwork. She found 41 active bank accounts that totaled in the 7 figures. Last September, I shouldn't include myself, my staff found $50,000 in a bag full of old bras, $10,000 in some old socks. So you got to go through it all.
Wrong parents, obviously.
And they were old bills. They'd been there a while.
I want to kind of pivot a little bit. So Gail said pre-COVID, you've gone through a lot through this pandemic. Let's talk about life before COVID, and then what you've done to pivot, improve your business, anything of that nature for Clear Home Solutions.
Well, I realized after it struck that I was fortunate in that I've had different kinds of businesses. So I'm used to pivoting and thinking differently. And also I was advising colleagues of mine, just ignite your imagination. Think of all the crazy possible things you could do, and then hone in on the ones that can feed your business, feed your core business. And of course, as you know, Jackie, from our work with the EOS system, our core focus, our mission is to ignite the possibilities of later life. And we do it through working with people's treasures. So I was trying to think, what can we do? How can we do this? Well, first of all, obviously, because our work is so intimate and emotional, and we're actually in the homes with people. And so obviously we couldn't do that, especially initially with the lockdown, while everybody was trying to figure out what this disease was about. What can we do to try to prevent getting it and transmitting it? And additionally, the senior living communities had to go into lockdown because, as we well know, 40% of the fatalities have happened in one form of senior living community or another. So that the business obviously tamped down. So I did have to furlough some people and lay off some people, and that was very painful. I kept my project managers on board. And so we just started doing things that we've been putting off, like fine-tuning our procedures, just reviewing everything we do. We have time for it. Let's document even more. Let's adjust the checklists, etc. So that was one way as a company we could be proactive. And then there were a couple of things I've been wanting to do, in some cases for years. I thought, well, let's just do them. And one of them is creating an app called Later Life Living. It should launch in August of this year, 2020. Later Life Living is a vetted Angie's List for later life. So many people, the proverbial poo hits the fan with themselves or their older parents or what have you, and they don't know what's out there to help them. There are geriatric care managers. There are people who do what we do with a special skill set of working with older adults, including those with dementia, but people don't know that we exist. And so the idea is they can go to Later Life Living and learn about the different services available, and then click and be connected with vetted professionals. They have to be in, depending on the category, they have to have been in business for a certain number of years, have certain licenses, in our case, accreditation, national accreditation, et cetera. So these aren't people who've suddenly been a pop-up shop. They've been around, so they're much more trustworthy. So that's one thing, that app, Later Life Living. Additionally, I've been dying to do a podcast, and I now have 6 interviews in the hopper, and it's called How to Move Your Mom and Still Be on Speaking Terms Afterward. This is very important. And so again, talking to professionals, and then also I'm convincing some of my clients to come forward and talking about their own experiences. I think it's so important for people to discuss that. And also, additionally, in terms of our own services within our company, offering them virtual move management, which has to do more with logistics and coaching online, and talking people through the process, and same thing with organizing, the same thing. So it's a matter of really just, honestly, think of all the crazy ideas, because you never know when one or two of them might actually work. But it is important, because initially when you think of all the crazy ideas, it's a fire hose. And you want to get it down to a stream that will feed your core business. Later life, we'll send business my way and to others. And the podcast describes what we do. And it's fun, as you guys know, because you do this. So like I say, ignite your imagination and then fine tune.
Love it. Spoken like a true visionary is what she is.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Just take the compliment, Marty. Thank you.
So my question is then, what is your marketing strategy? Because you're developing new products. How are you going to make people aware of what you have to offer?
Well, and that's always fun. Well, thankfully, I have a huge network in LA, and I belong to a huge networking organization, and I'm lucky I've been doing this for a while. So especially in terms of the podcast, I'm also, there's my national association, the National Association of Senior Move Managers. It's nearly 1,000 strong. I'm on the board and I happen to be president-elect, so I'll certainly put the word out that way. There are a lot of free ways. There are a lot of free ways in LA, but free and inexpensive ways to promote oneself. That's usually social media. There's using your network. And of course, and I'm sure you guys do this too, when I have a guest on, I ask them to, when their episode is going to air or stream, that they put it out through their own networks. And so word of mouth can grow. Mm-hmm. And then additionally, obviously, you can invest in things like Google AdWords, PR, that sort of thing. Offering webinars, for example, to senior living communities. Finding those spots where you can really reach people, and especially in terms of, and right now I really feel like it's all about trust. It's all about trust. And for my core business, for Clear Home Solutions, we were the first company in Southern California to implement a formal COVID-19 policy and post that on our website. This is early mid-March. And we were reviewing it in May just to see if it needed to be tweaked. And I'm so glad we already had the proper protocols in place, even in March, with the masks, with the safety glasses or eyeglasses, with the gloves and all that. But there was this one little phrase that was kind of poignant. It said, well, even though the CDC doesn't recommend wearing masks, and that had changed by May, it'd be so fascinating to talk to our former selves back in February and see what we were thinking. But safety is so important, and we were actually the first company in LA County to earn our national organization their hang on, I gotta remember the name of it, their COVID-19 certificate for prevention and safety excellence. So we were the first to earn that locally. And very important, following those protocols. Keep everybody safe, keep our clients safe, also keep my staff safe. So
when you think about, so you said you had to furlough some employees.
And lay them off, yeah.
Which it's happened all over the place. I think there's probably more that's coming. Some of the companies that we have talked to, when there was work to be had, they would have issues trying to find people to fill those seats. What's your experience been?
And I've encountered that as well. I've had one project manager working the entire time because she was finishing up a long-term project, and we kept getting a steady trickle of new work. And so she's been working the whole time. God bless her. Thank you, Kathy. And then, yeah, because they don't want to eat into that additional $600 benefit. And I understand that, but after months of dealing with it, it's tough. It's tough. And, I'm really great to those who kind of, really cooperate and try to make things work. And also there's the idea that it's kind of a paid vacation. And thankfully, when I have had weeks where I could really cover, like they would make as much money as they would have on unemployment, they have stepped up. I can tell it's like, oh, I got to work this week, but they have stepped up. But it's tricky. And given that I'm sure we are going back into lockdown because there are too many careless people out there. I call them selfish and ignorant because they're not wearing masks. There's this great meme on Facebook that says, wearing a mask is not a political test, it's an IQ test. And I would say also a test of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you care about anybody else around you? Anyway, that's my stance and I'm sticking to it. So it's going to be interesting to see where our particular industry goes. Because again, it's so intimate. And so that's why just working on the virtual aspect of it right now, I think we'll continue having a steady trickle of it. I could also, I could market to the senior living communities that are open, more or less open, and emphasize our safety precautions and everything like that. I'm just very concerned about the numbers and where this is going. And I just want to be respectful of everyone. So it's tricky time.
So if I may jump in, Jackie, Marty, you said that's my statement and I'm sticking to it. It was a courageous statement as opposed to a politically safe statement. And so, there are a lot of challenges to leaders these days that are bringing them to places where they need to make courageous statements.
How did this get to, and I'm not directing this to you, but how did this get political? This is a health risk. I can't, it's shocking to me. And it's just practical, especially because we work with older adults. I've actually added another page to our client contract that says basically you need to wear a mask when we're there and maintain social distance. And I do have a clause in just our regular contract that says if it's more gently put than the following, but if the situation becomes untenable, in other words, if people are screaming and being really verbally abusive of my staff, or in this case, they refuse to respect, I call it respecting the virus and its wild nature, then we're going to have to walk off because it's not only unsafe for my staff, it's unsafe for them. And like I say, I don't feel like I'm being courageous at all. I feel like I'm being thank you for saying that. That's lovely of you to say that. Thank you. However, to me, it's just facts. I believe in science. I follow the science. And it tells me this is how we protect ourselves and others from spreading this horrible virus. I found out, now I haven't seen this guy in over 40 years, but I found out through the grapevine, my first high school crush died of it in Florida.
Wow.
I am one step removed from somebody who got so sick he lost most of his fingers and toes. I know a number of people who've had this, and they had lighter cases of it, and they said, I've never been so sick in my life. I don't want anybody to go, even people I don't like, I still don't want them to get this virus. And so far, our clients have, in one case, grudgingly gone along with it. And I even had to have a discussion with one client and just say, look, and this is somebody, we were working with them for the 4th time, and she sent me other clients. And I had to have a tough call with her. I just said, look, I need you guys to wear masks and maintain social distance. Otherwise, we just really can't be there. And I understand if this means you need to work with someone else. And thankfully, they got it and they respected it. So they did it. But I don't like the idea of losing business to it. But if we do, we do.
So knowing that you and Jackie have been doing some really important work on your business as opposed to in your business, I think I'd love to hear you, for our listeners, really talk about, it's easy to put stuff off. I'll wait until after, right? And I'll wait until we can do it in person. But you've been doing some coaching and working on your business, doing it virtually. Tell us a little bit about that.
I love working with Jackie. There's a magnificent book called Traction. And it focuses on, we call it the EOS system, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And Jackie, chime in if I get anything wrong. And
Great.
here's my book. There we go.
Yeah.
Traction has this wonderful system to help hold people accountable. Jackie, you can probably describe this better than I can. So fill in where needed. But it basically, I mentioned our core focus before. You kind of start with building that core focus and your core values that you really stick with and measure everything by, including not only your staff, but yourself as well as the business leader. You have the big overarching goals. You break those down because it can be so daunting, and there's time frames, deadlines, etc. And it's just a great way to keep you on target for reaching those goals. Just laying it out very clearly. I had mentioned that one of the things I was doing with my staff during this was reviewing all our procedures and such, and making exhaustive checklists and things like that. And I had to kind of convince them, this will make it simpler. Trust me. And that's because you don't have to think so much and keep it all in your head. And in a way, that's what a big part of what the EOS system is about. Just having it all written down and having that roadmap for where you want to go. And it's been wonderful. And I just hired a new operations manager. Thank you, Jackie, for my Monica. Love her. We just started yesterday. But she too will be part of that. And it's also a great way to just keep everybody's eyes on the prize. That's wonderful. And why put it off? Because my attitude when this all hit, I thought, okay, I see that and God, Jackie, you've heard me say this a zillion times. Everything has its sunlit and shadow side. Obviously, with this pandemic, there's a very cold, dark, deep shadow. There are slivers of sunlight you can find to enjoy and or take advantage of. And one of them was suddenly I had time to do things I hadn't had time to do before.
She delegated and elevated is what she did.
I'm sorry, what?
You delegated the duties that were holding you down to elevate your business.
Yeah. And to improve the business and to take on these projects I've wanted to do. But I've had that idea for that app, Later Life Living, for years. Okay, there was time. And also there was an opportunity to do it instead of paying $50,000 to do the app, to do it much less expensively and still do it effectively, and to just shoot it out there and see what happens. And the podcast I've been dying to do, and it's just so nice to finally be able to get that off the ground. Mm-hmm. But it's looking for the opportunities to do things that you've wanted to do that, again, still feed your core business. And also realizing that people could say, I've noticed not as many people are saying I can't wait till we're back to normal. I think people are realizing it ain't gonna be like it was.
Well, I don't know what normal is anymore.
This is normal now. This is normal. Thank God for Zoom, or my head would have exploded long ago.
Yeah, as an extrovert who's outgoing, I can totally relate to that.
But Zoom and so being able to share screens and things like this. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if that wasn't possible. We're finding out how well we finally can work remotely. I mean, this goes back to Oliver Toffler's book, The Third Wave, predicting that we'd return to home to work eventually when the technology would let us do that. And we're seeing finally the technologies is at the point where we can do this effectively. So I've got an office. Lease comes up in about a year and a half. My goal is to not be there anymore. For one thing, it saves a lot of drive time. Oh my goodness. I have so many more hours in my day because I don't have to drive to meetings. It's heaven.
So with my Vistage members, we and you get to see people's lives. You see them in a different way.
Yeah.
And so one of our meetings, I asked everybody to bring pictures and share the projects that they have done in their homes, from establishing new gardens to things. So do you have a project around your house that you've done that?
I've learned to make a mean English muffin.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. My home hasn't been a lot done to my home because I've been actually nurturing these other things, the app and the podcast. That's kind of my creative outlet because it's really fun. And I used to, when I was at Cornell, I was at the college radio station. So this is almost a return to those roots, which is really lovely. So I don't really have a project. So I think I've eaten all the latest English muffins. So otherwise I would, run to my kitchen and bring you one.
So you actually make them from scratch?
English muffins.
Oh, so do you have to do? Because people were making sourdough bread, so somebody brought me a starter. So I think yesterday was about my 7th loaf that I have made.
I want some sourdough.
Getting really good at this. It was nice and soft yesterday. So so what does it take to make an English muffin?
Well, honestly, I'm experimenting. I found a number of recipes online, and so I'm experimenting. So I've tried 3 recipes so far, one of which I'm like, nope, not that one. So I did manage to get I tried making yeast, and I wasn't able to do that. It doesn't surprise me because I tend to have like a purple thumb. I tend to kill plants, even cactus sometimes. So it doesn't surprise me I killed the sourdough yeast. So I did manage to finally get my hands on some like instant active yeast. So that was good. So it's bread flour and then some sort of regular flour, whether it's like whole wheat or white flour, what have you. And then obviously some eggs, some butter. Love butter. Just having patience to let them rise overnight. And then you cook them on a griddle and in the oven, which is interesting.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
sure about that. Interesting. I will tell you, actually, I'm thinking actually, there have been a few things. So a dear old friend of mine who I've known my entire adult life, we met actually first day, first class, freshman year at Cornell, Astronomy 101, my dear friend Kathy. She says, hey, why don't we get together and and have like a Zoom call. This started back in, I think, early April, and we now every noon on Saturday, we call them our bliss meetings. And oh my goodness, we share recipes. I discovered this amazing thing called a butter bell, where it's how you keep butter at room temperature and yet safe. Look it up, butter bell. They're amazing, especially with an English muffin. Hello, it's not time.
Yeah, so you don't have to stick it in the microwave and soften it, right?
Yeah, butter bell. So great. Oh my goodness, it's wonderful. My friend Kathleen Alexander introduced me, and I love it. You're scribbling down. That's what we do. And then what else? There've been any number of things. We did. Oh, I remember. Actually, Kathy had a birthday in the middle of all this in May, and it became like we took Kathy off the little email thread, and so we surprised her with all these things on that Saturday being delivered or what have you. And so I discovered this one, and I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's a homeless shelter downtown, or benefits homeless women, and got some candles and some other things, some soaps from them. And so we're just kind of sharing these things with each other that we're discovering, and it's so fun. It's almost like, it's not quite like Christmas morning because it's not like we're all opening presents, but we're giving each other these great ideas, and it's so much fun. Things to read, videos to watch, all that stuff. It's epic.
So a couple minutes left, and one of the things, okay, so actually I'm going to do this real quick. So 30 seconds. We have this show really also for those that want to be business owners. What is the one takeaway that you would want someone to get from that wants to launch a business?
If they're thinking about it, do your due diligence. Prepare yourself. Don't just fly into it. Get your DBA. Set up a separate bank account. Don't commingle funds. Don't do that. Have a kind of plan going forward, and know that it will change. If you can afford to, hire a consultant. Jackie, hire a consultant, because it just makes so much difference to have a sounding board. Also, seek out other entrepreneurs, because nobody gets what an entrepreneur goes through like another one.
True.
It's so important to have those sounding boards. Know that it will be very frustrating. Yeah. So many people over the years, my business owner friends and I, and you guys can relate, people say, oh my God, that's so great. You can make your own hours. Yeah, 24/7, I make my own hours.
Exactly.
Even while you're sleeping.
Yes.
Oh the dreams, I guess. Yeah. So just know it's going to be.
Final words.
Yeah, sorry. It's going to be so much more work than you can imagine. And yet, so fulfilling in so many ways. Just find that network and plan.
Awesome. Marty, thank you so much for being our guest today on From the Corner Office at Home. And Gail, thank you so much for being a part of the interview today. I love having my partner in front of the camera versus behind. It's been a wonderful meeting today. Great interview. Thank you both so much. And I
Thank
hope
you.
a great rest of your day. Thank you, San Gabriel Valley, for joining us. And until next time.
You guys be safe and be well, everybody.
Thank you, Marty.